The vast chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Grand Counselor Thelera raised her four-fingered hand. Hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy, some bipedal, others floating in specialized tanks, and a few existing as pure energy within containment fields, all turned their attention to the massive central projection. "We have discovered another sentient species," Thelera announced, her voice translated simultaneously into over 300 languages. "They call themselves humans, and their homeworld is designated as Earth." Admiral Vox, a tall blue-skinned official with ridged features, stepped forward. His military posture and the gleaming medals across his chest marked him as a high-ranking member of the Council's exploratory division. "They are primitive but curious," Admiral Vox explained, activating a series of images showing Earth's cities, vehicles, and basic space technology. "They have achieved nuclear power, rudimentary space travel within their own system, and global information networks. However, they have not yet discovered proper faster-than-light travel." A ripple of dismissive sounds echoed through the chamber. In a galaxy where most species had been traversing the stars for thousands of years, humans were mere infants. "Why bring them to our attention at all?" asked a representative from the ancient Muldari race, their holographic form flickering with impatience. Admiral Vox pressed a control, and the display shifted to show humans building, fighting, adapting, and overcoming various challenges. "They are surprisingly resourceful," he admitted. "They advance quickly and show unusual problem-solving skills. Our observation teams have noted their technology has advanced more in the last century than most species achieve in a millennium." Grand Counselor Thelera studied the images thoughtfully. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" "Limited membership," Vox replied. "Let them join as observers. Give them restricted access to basic technology and monitor their development closely." 3 months later, the skies above Earth filled with lights as the Council's contact ships entered the atmosphere. Governments around the world scrambled into emergency sessions. Militaries went on high alert. Religious leaders called for calm or proclaimed the end times. In a hastily converted convention center in Geneva, Captain James Miller straightened his newly designed uniform and took a deep breath. At 42, with graying temples and steady brown eyes, he had been chosen to represent humanity in this historic moment. "Remember," General Wilson said beside him, "you speak for all of us now. Stay calm, be respectful, but don't let them think we're pushovers." Captain Miller nodded. "No pressure, then." The doors slid open, and Admiral Vox entered with 4 other alien representatives. The humans in the room gasped despite their preparation. Seeing actual extraterrestrial beings in person was overwhelming. "Captain James Miller," Admiral Vox said, his translator converting his complex tonal language into English. "I am Admiral Vox of the Galactic Council. We come in peace and with an offer of limited membership in our interstellar community." Captain Miller stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Admiral, on behalf of Earth and all humans, we welcome you and are honored by your offer." Over the next few days, the initial shock gave way to marathon negotiation sessions. Earth's governments, setting aside their differences in the face of this new reality, formed the Terran Alliance. The alliance would represent all humans in galactic matters while allowing nations to maintain their sovereignty in Earth affairs. Admiral Vox seemed impressed by how quickly humans organized themselves, though he tried not to show it. "Your species adapts well to change," he noted during a break in the talks. Captain Miller smiled. "We've had plenty of practice. Earth has never been particularly stable." "Indeed." Admiral Vox examined some readings on his wrist device. "Your planet's climate shifts, tectonic activity, and biological diversity all create constant challenges. Perhaps that explains your resilience." The final agreement granted humans limited access to Council technology, primarily medical advancements, clean energy systems, and basic star charts. In exchange, Earth would share its resources and allow a small Council outpost to be established in orbit. After the public ceremonies and worldwide celebrations, Admiral Vox met with Captain Miller in private. "You understand the Council sees Earth as a junior partner," Vox explained, more bluntly than in the formal sessions. "Most species take centuries to earn full membership rights." Captain Miller nodded. "We understand our place, Admiral. We have much to learn." "Good." Admiral Vox seemed relieved. Some Council members worried that humans might be too ambitious. I assured them you know your limitations. When Admiral Vox returned to his ship that evening, he recorded his private assessment for Grand Counselor Fellera. "Humans are adaptable but ultimately harmless," he reported. "They are grateful for the technology we've shared and will likely focus on improving their own planet for several decades before becoming significant galactic participants. They pose no threat to established Council interests." Back on Earth, Captain Miller sat in a secure underground facility with the Terran Alliance leadership, including Chief Engineer Lisa Reynolds, a brilliant woman with short red hair and intense focus. "They're underestimating us," Lisa said, reviewing the technical specifications of the devices the Council had shared. "These power systems are basic, but the principles behind them. There's so much potential they're not exploring." General Wilson frowned. "Are you suggesting we violate the agreement?" "The Council made it clear we can use this technology, not try to improve it." "They said we can't share it with non-Council worlds," Captain Miller corrected. "They never specifically forbade innovation." Lisa's eyes lit up as she projected a series of designs onto the table. "If we combine their energy transfer concepts with our manufacturing techniques, we could build something revolutionary. Not weapons. I'm thinking bigger." "How much bigger?" Captain Miller asked. Lisa smiled. "Game-changing big. The kind of big that rewrites the rules." Captain Miller considered this, then nodded slowly. "Begin preliminary research, but keep it quiet. The Admiral already thinks we're simple and harmless. Let's not give him reason to reconsider." As the meeting ended, Captain Miller looked at the night sky through a small window. Somewhere up there, Admiral Vox's ship was preparing to depart, confident that humans would be easy to manage. "They think they've seen what humans can do," he murmured to himself. "They have no idea what we're capable of when challenged." In orbit, Admiral Vox made one final log entry before entering stasis for the long journey back to Council headquarters. Humanity, classified as minimal concern. Recommendation: routine monitoring only. He couldn't have been more wrong. 3 years after first contact, the Galactic Council monitoring station orbiting Earth picked up unusual energy readings. The junior officer on duty, a tentacled belter named Kren, adjusted his sensors and frowned at the data. "Commander," Kren called out, "I'm detecting non-standard power signatures from the human orbital platform near their moon." Commander Drez, who had replaced Admiral Vox as Earth's overseer, floated over on his gravity disk. Unlike Vox's dismissive attitude, Drez had developed a healthy respect for human ingenuity. "Show me," he ordered, his compound eyes analyzing the readings. "That's interesting. The pattern doesn't match any technology we provided them." The energy signature pulsed with an unusual rhythm, almost like a heartbeat but with mathematical precision. It wasn't particularly powerful, but its configuration was unlike anything in the Council's technical database. "Schedule a meeting with Captain Miller," Commander Drez decided. "Let's see what our human friends are up to." The next day, Captain Miller appeared on the station's communication screen, looking slightly tired but with a calm smile. "Commander Drez, always a pleasure. What can I do for you today?" Commander Drez projected the energy readings. "Perhaps you could explain these unusual signatures we've detected from your lunar station." Miller's expression remained unchanged. "Just some efficiency improvements to the power systems you shared with us. Our engineers found ways to optimize the energy flow for Earth's specific needs." Optimization. Drez's antennae twitched skeptically. "The configuration looks entirely new." "Oh, we humans love to tinker," Miller said with a casual shrug. "Engineer Reynolds has a team working on adapting your technology to work better with our existing infrastructure." "Nothing exciting," I'm afraid. Just making things run more smoothly. Commander Drez wasn't entirely convinced, but the energy signatures didn't appear dangerous. Very well. Please keep us informed of any tinkering in the future. After the call ended, Commander Drez filed a report to Council headquarters, noting the unusual development but classifying it as low concern. Meanwhile, deep within a converted mining facility beneath the lunar surface, engineer Lisa Reynolds stood before a massive holographic display showing complex energy pathways and mathematical equations. 30 of Earth's brightest minds worked at stations around her, a mix of physicists, engineers, and mathematicians from every corner of the planet. The test was successful, Lisa announced, brushing red hair from her forehead. But they noticed our power signature. We need better shielding before the next phase. Dr. Ben Taylor, a quantum physicist with dark skin and a neatly trimmed beard, looked up from his calculations. The problem is the wave harmonics. Council technology operates on standard sign patterns, but our modifications create this unique interference pattern. He gestured to a pulsing waveform. It's like trying to hide a drum solo in the middle of a classical concert. Lisa studied the pattern. Then we need to change our approach. Instead of hiding our work, let's camouflage it. Make it look like something else, something they'd expect to see. A mundane cover story, agreed Dr. Taylor. I like it. Over the next 6 months, the Terran Alliance rapidly expanded their operations. While maintaining a facade of simple technological adaptation, they began secretly transporting materials to Jupiter's moons. The massive gas giant's radiation belts provided excellent cover from Council scanners. Captain Miller coordinated with governments worldwide to conceal their true activities. When Council representatives inquired about increased shuttle traffic to the outer planets, he explained it away as mining operations and scientific research. In reality, Engineer Reynolds was leading the construction of something unprecedented beneath the icy crust of Europa. The Council thinks too linearly, Lisa explained to her team as they gathered in Europa's massive underground chamber. They've had FTL travel for millennia, but they've always approached it the same way, pushing an object through space faster than light. She displayed images of Council ship designs. Notice how they've barely changed in 1,000 years. They found something that works and just kept refining it, but they missed a fundamental possibility. Dr. Taylor continued her thought. Instead of moving an object through space, we move space around the object. Lisa finished with a grin. Or, in this case, we fold space to relocate an entire planetary body. The chamber they stood in housed a massive ring structure 1/2 kilometer in diameter. Thousands of modified Council power cells lined the ring, connected by a webwork of human-designed circuitry that followed patterns no Council engineer would have considered. The displacement network prototype is 60% complete, Lisa reported. Once operational, it should be able to temporarily shift Europa to a predetermined location up to 50 light-years away, then return it to its original position. If it works, Dr. Taylor cautioned. When it works, Lisa corrected. The math is solid. Back at the Council monitoring station, Commander Drez was becoming increasingly curious about human activities. The transport ships heading to Jupiter were carrying materials that didn't match their stated mining purposes. I think they're building something, he told his second-in-command. Something big. Should we inform headquarters? The officer asked. Commander Drez considered this. Not yet. Let's gather more information first. The last thing we need is Admiral Vox returning and finding we've created a panic over nothing. He didn't know that Admiral Vox was indeed preparing to return to Earth. The Council's quarterly review had noted Earth's unusual resource consumption and technological adaptation rate, flagging it for higher-level attention. On a secure channel to Captain Miller, Lisa provided an update from Europa. We need another month, maybe 2, she said, her image flickering slightly due to Jupiter's interference. The power integration is tricky, but we're making progress. The Council's getting suspicious, Miller warned. and Admiral Vox is returning for an inspection tour. Lisa's expression hardened. Vox? The blue guy who thinks we're clever monkeys. The very same. Well, Lisa said with determination. He's in for a surprise. We'll be ready for the first test by the time he arrives. Just keep them distracted for a few more weeks. Captain Miller nodded. I'll do my best. But remember, we're not looking to start a conflict. This is about protecting Earth's future. Trust me, James, Lisa said, using his first name as she only did in serious moments. What we're building isn't a weapon. It's a safety net for humanity. And maybe for everyone else too. As their call ended, neither was aware that this safety net would soon be desperately needed. At the edge of Council space, a previously unknown species called the Drax had begun a devastating campaign of conquest that was overwhelming the Council's defenses. The clock was ticking on humanity's secret project, and the stakes were about to become much higher than anyone had imagined. Admiral Vox's flagship emerged from faster-than-light travel near Earth's solar system, but the Admiral was not focused on his scheduled inspection of human progress. His usually immaculate uniform was rumpled from days without rest, and the ridges on his blue face were pale with stress. Send an urgent communication to the Terran Alliance, he ordered his communications officer. Priority Alpha. On Earth, Captain Miller was in the middle of a routine meeting when the emergency signal blared. The Council never used Priority Alpha channels. Something was terribly wrong. Miller rushed to the secure communication room, where Admiral Vox's haggard face appeared on the main screen. Admiral, Miller said, alarmed by the alien's appearance. What's happened? War, Vox replied bluntly. The Drax have launched simultaneous attacks across 12 Council systems. 3 homeworlds have already fallen. Miller had never heard of the Drax, but the gravity in Vox's voice told him everything he needed to know. How can we help? Help. A bitter laugh escaped Vox. Captain, I'm not here for help. I'm here to warn you and discuss emergency refugee protocols. The Council believes Earth's remote location might serve as a temporary haven for evacuees. Miller stared at the screen in shock. The mighty Galactic Council, with technology thousands of years beyond Earth's, was losing a war so badly they were planning evacuations. How many refugees are we talking about? Millions, potentially billions if more worlds fall, Vox replied. Which seems increasingly likely. The Drax technology is superior to ours in ways we didn't think possible. Miller's mind raced. Earth could never accommodate billions of alien refugees. Their own planet was already struggling with limited resources, but an idea was forming, a desperate one. Admiral, I need to consult with my team. Can you send us all available information on the Drax attacks? Tactical data, fleet movements, everything. Admiral Vox looked surprised but nodded. I'll transmit what we have, though I don't see how it will help. Your military technology is centuries behind the Council's, and we're being overwhelmed. Sometimes a fresh perspective helps, Miller said diplomatically. Please, dock at our orbital station. We'll meet you there in 6 hours. The moment the communication ended, Miller opened a direct line to Europa. Lisa, how close are we to a full test of the displacement network? Engineer Reynolds appeared on screen, surrounded by her team working frantically on the massive ring structure. The final power couplings are being installed now. We were planning to test with a small asteroid next week, but there is no next week, Miller interrupted. The Council is at war with an advanced species called the Drax. They're losing badly and talking about evacuating billions of refugees to Earth. Lisa's eyes widened. That's not possible. We couldn't handle that many. She stopped suddenly, realization dawning. You're thinking we could use the network. Not on an asteroid, on entire planets. A heavy silence fell over the Europa team. What Miller was suggesting was an enormous leap from their planned test. James, Lisa said quietly, we've never tested it at all, let alone at planetary scale. The power requirements would be astronomical. Can it work? Miller pressed. Lisa exchanged glances with Dr. Taylor, complex calculations visibly running through both their minds. Theoretically, yes, Dr. Taylor answered. The math works at any scale, but the risks are less than the risk of extinction, Miller finished. How soon can you be ready for a demonstration? Lisa took a deep breath. We'll need to divert all power from Luna Base and every orbital platform. 24 hours, minimum. You have 12, Miller said grimly. I'm bringing Admiral Vox to Europa. 6 hours later, in the orbital station's conference room, Miller faced a deeply skeptical Admiral Vox and Commander Dres. You want me to believe that in just 3 years, humans have developed technology that could save Council worlds? Vox's tone was dismissive despite his desperation. Captain, this is no time for false hope. Miller stood firm. Admiral, what if I told you we haven't been building weapons or ships or conventional defenses at all? What if we've been focused on something entirely different? He activated a holographic display showing the displacement network on Europa. This is why we've been shipping materials to Jupiter's moons. This is what Engineer Reynolds and her team have been building. Commander Dres leaned forward, his compound eyes analyzing the schematics. This configuration, it's unlike anything in Council records, because it approaches space-time manipulation from a fundamentally different direction, Miller explained. We call it the displacement network. It doesn't move objects through space. It moves space around objects. Admiral Vox stood abruptly. Impossible. The energy required to manipulate space-time at that scale would be enormous, Miller agreed, but not impossible. We'd found a way to create a cascading effect that multiplies the power output of your energy cells by roughly 4,000%. The aliens exchanged alarmed glances. Council scientists had been refining those power cells for millennia, improving efficiency by mere fractions of a percent each century. If what you're saying is true, Commander Dres began, it would mean we could temporarily relocate an entire planet, Miller finished. Move a threatened world out of danger until the threat passes. Admiral Vox's ridged brow furrowed deeply. Moving planets is theoretically impossible according to our science. According to your approach to science, Miller corrected gently. Humans had to think differently. We had to be creative with limited resources. For the first time since arriving, a flicker of hope appeared in Admiral Vox's eyes. Show me, he said simply. 12 hours later, Admiral Vox stood in the massive chamber beneath Europa's icy surface, watching as Lisa Reynolds directed final preparations. The enormous ring hummed with energy, creating a faint blue glow that reflected off the ice walls. The first test will be Europa itself, Lisa explained. We've calculated a displacement to the Ta-Ceti system and back. The transition should take approximately 3 seconds from external observation, though anyone on Europa won't experience any time passage. And if it fails, Vox asked quietly, then Europa becomes a very interesting new asteroid field, Dr. Taylor replied honestly. But our calculations are solid. Grand Councilor Fillera and the remaining council leadership had joined via secure holographic link, their various alien forms flickering around the chamber. The desperation on their faces was clear. Another council world had fallen during the preparations. This technology, Fillera spoke carefully, if successful, would change the fundamental balance of power in the galaxy. That's not our intention, Miller assured her. This isn't a weapon. It's a shield. Lisa stepped forward. We're ready for activation. All personnel are secured. Power systems are at maximum capacity. Miller looked to Admiral Vox, who gave a solemn nod. Proceed, Miller ordered. Lisa began the activation sequence. The ring's hum deepened to a resonant tone that vibrated through everyone's bones. The blue glow intensified, spreading inward to fill the entire circle. Field stabilization at 97%, called Dr. Taylor. 99%. Field is stable. Initiating displacement in 3, 2, 1. A flash of light blinded everyone momentarily. When they could see again, the chamber appeared unchanged, But through the monitoring screens, they could see stars in completely different configurations outside Europa's ice shell. Displacement successful, Lissa announced, her voice tight with controlled excitement. We've arrived at the Toth City coordinates. Preparing for return jump. Admiral Vox stared at the screens in disbelief. You've done it, he whispered. You've actually done it. 3 seconds later, Europa returned to its orbit around Jupiter with another flash of light. As sensor data confirmed their precise return, the human team erupted in cheers and embraces. Even the council representatives showed their species various forms of astonishment. Grand Counselor Thiller's hologram approached Miller. Captain, it seems we have severely underestimated humanity's potential. Miller smiled slightly. A common mistake, Counselor. Now, let's discuss which worlds need immediate evacuation. The network can be scaled up for full planets, but we'll need to construct additional displacement rings. Admiral Vox, who had once dismissed humans as primitive, bowed deeply in the formal council gesture of profound respect. 3 years ago, he said quietly, I reported that humans posed no threat to established council interests. I was correct, but for entirely wrong reasons. You never intended to threaten, only to protect. Miller nodded. That's humanity at its best, Admiral. Now, let's save some worlds. The council emergency chamber buzzed with frantic activity. Holograms flickered as reports of Drax attacks streamed in from across the galaxy. Grand Counselor Thillera stood at the center, her 4 arms moving continuously as she coordinated the desperate defense efforts. Nexus Prime has fallen, announced a communications officer. The orbital defenses were breached in under 10 hours. Thillera's silver skin paled. Evacuation status. Only 30% of the population reached the transport ships. Silence fell across the chamber. Nexus Prime had been home to over 3 billion citizens. The mathematics of loss were staggering. Admiral Vox entered with Captain Miller and Engineer Lisa Reynolds. The human presence in the Council's most secure facility was unprecedented, but these were unprecedented times. The full Council must hear what these humans propose, Admiral Vox announced. Many Council members appeared skeptical. The Drax had already destroyed their most advanced defensive systems. What could these primitive humans possibly offer? Lisa stepped forward, activating a holographic display of the displacement network. Her red hair was pulled back tightly, dark circles under her eyes evidence of sleepless nights. Our test on Europa was successful, she began. We've proven we can temporarily relocate a planetary body and return it precisely to its original coordinates. A moon is not a planet, objected Counselor Czar, a gaseous entity contained in a floating orb. The mass difference is enormous. The principle remains the same, Lisa countered. The network doesn't move the mass directly. It shifts the space containing that mass. Whether it's a moon or a planet makes little difference to the physics involved. She displayed a series of complex equations that caused the scientific advisors to lean forward with sudden interest. We've already begun constructing 7 additional displacement rings, Captain Miller added. Each can be transported to a threatened world and deployed within 48 hours. Grand Counselor Thillera studied the humans intently. You're proposing to move entire planets out of the path of the Drax fleet. Precisely, Miller confirmed. Not permanently, just long enough to evacuate populations or for your military to regroup. Admiral Vox stepped forward. I have witnessed their technology firsthand. It works, and right now we have no better options. The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices and translations as members debated the proposal. Some argued it was too risky, others that it was their only hope. Finally, Thellera raised all 4 hands for silence. We will try this human solution, she decided. Counselor Czar, which world faces the most immediate threat? Lyra II, the gaseous being replied. Drax fleet estimated arrival in 72 hours. Population of 1.6 billion. Then Lyra II will be our test, Thellera declared. Engineer Reynolds, How soon can your team be ready? Lisa exchanged glances with Miller. We can have a displacement ring there in 36 hours, operational in 48. Make it so. The next 2 days were a blur of activity. Council transport ships carried the massive ring components to Lyra II, while Lisa and her team worked around the clock to assemble the device in orbit around the threatened planet. On Earth, factories worldwide had shifted to producing components for additional displacement rings. The Terran Alliance had revealed the project to the public, and for once, the entire planet was united in purpose. As the deadline approached, Lisa supervised the final calibrations from a control center on Lyra II's largest moon. Dr. Taylor and his team monitored the power systems, which had been enhanced based on data from the Europa test. Drax fleet detected entering the system, reported a council officer. Estimated time to weapons range, 57 minutes. Lisa took a deep breath. Displacement ring is online. Power systems at full capacity. She opened a channel to the planet's surface, where billions of people waited in fear. This is Engineer Reynolds from Earth. In approximately 10 minutes, your entire planet will experience a brief flash of light. Do not be alarmed. You will be temporarily relocated to a safe location until the threat has passed. Captain Miller stood beside Grand Counselor Thillera and Admiral Vox in the Lunar Control Center, watching as the ring began to glow with blue energy. You understand, Thillera said quietly. If this fails, an entire civilization dies. Miller nodded grimly. It won't fail. The displacement ring expanded its energy field, gradually encompassing the entire planet in a blue sphere. Field stabilization at 95% and holding, Dr. Taylor announced. Initiating displacement in 3, 2, 1. A brilliant flash of light rippled across the space where Lyra II had been. When it faded, only empty space remained where a planet had existed moments before. The control room erupted in cheers from the human team, while the council members stood in shocked silence. By the first stars, whispered Admiral Vox. They actually did it. On the view screens, they could see the approaching Drax fleet slowing in apparent confusion at finding their target missing. How long will the planet remain displaced? Thillera asked. The displacement coordinates place Lyra II in an uninhabited system about 70 light-years from here, Lisa explained. They can remain there safely for up to 72 hours before we need to bring them back. Admiral Vox studied the tactical display. The Drax appear confused. They're scanning the area, probably trying to determine if this is some kind of cloaking technology. Let them wonder, Thillera said with the first hint of hope in her voice. Meanwhile, I'm authorizing full deployment of this displacement network to all threatened worlds. Over the next 2 weeks, the combined efforts of humanity and the Council led to the construction and deployment of 12 displacement rings. One by one, threatened worlds blinked out of existence just before Drax forces arrived, only to reappear days later after the enemy had moved on. Captain Miller coordinated the massive operation from the Council headquarters, becoming the first human to hold a commanding position in Council space. The Drax are adapting, he warned during a strategy session. They've begun targeting our displacement rings before they're fully assembled. Admiral Vox, now working closely with Miller, nodded. We need a new approach. Actually, Lisa interjected, joining the meeting via hologram from her latest deployment. I've been thinking about that. What if we don't just move planets away from the Drax? What do you mean? Asked Thillera. The network can relocate any planetary body to predetermined coordinates, Lisa explained, including uninhabited planets. Understanding dawned on Admiral Vox's face. You want to move planets into the path of the Drax fleet? Not exactly, Lisa smiled. But close. I'm thinking of a more theatrical approach. 3 days later, the Drax Armada approached Earth, determined to destroy the source of the technology that had frustrated their conquest. Their sleek black ships, numbering in the thousands, emerged from FTL travel near Jupiter. But instead of finding a defenseless blue planet, They discovered only a massive displacement ring orbiting empty space where Earth should have been. On the far side of the galaxy, the citizens of Earth watched through relay feeds as their planet was temporarily relocated to safety. Captain Miller stood with Grand Counselor Thillera, watching the confused Drax fleet spread out to search for their vanished target. Phase 1 complete, Miller reported. They've committed their main fleet to the Earth attack. Thillera nodded. And now for Phase 2. Throughout the galaxy, the remaining Council forces emerged from hiding, targeting the now divided Drax fleet segments. Without their main armada, the Drax outposts began to fall one by one. It was never about running away, Miller explained to Admiral Vox as they watched the battles unfold. It was about choosing when and where to fight. Admiral Vox's ridged brow lifted in appreciation. A strategy of selective engagement, fighting only the battles you can win. Exactly, Miller agreed. Sometimes the best offense is a really good disappearing act. As reports of Council victories began streaming in, Grand Counselor Thillera turned to Miller with a formal vow. Captain Miller, the Council acknowledges Earth's vital contribution to our survival. It is my honor to extend an invitation for Earth to join the Galactic Council as a full member world with all rights and privileges. Miller bowed in return. On behalf of humanity, we accept. Though I suspect the galaxy will never be quite the same again. No, Thillera agreed with what passed for a smile on her alien features. I believe that is precisely the point. 1 year after the first successful planetary displacement, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council looked very different. The traditional circular arrangement had been replaced with a star pattern, symbolizing the new philosophy of equal contribution from all member species. At one of the 5 points sat the human delegation, led by Captain James Miller, now officially Ambassador Miller. Grand Counselor Thillera called the session to order. Today marks the anniversary of what history will remember as the Displacement Revolution. 12 civilizations saved, billions of lives preserved, and a seemingly unstoppable enemy defeated. The chamber's atmosphere was solemn yet celebratory. Representatives from worlds that would have been lost now sat among their peers, their gratitude evident in formal gestures toward the human delegation. The war is officially over, Thillera continued. The remaining Drax forces signed the surrender agreement this morning. Their leadership has accepted restricted territory and technological monitoring for the next century. Applause rippled through the chamber in various forms, some clapping hands, others flashing colors or emitting harmonious tones according to their species' customs. Admiral Vox, now Chief Defense Coordinator, stepped to the center of the chamber. His once dismissive attitude toward humans had transformed into profound respect. The final tallies are complete, he announced. The displacement network successfully relocated 27 planets temporarily and 4 permanently to safer systems. No lives were lost during any displacement operation. He turned toward Ambassador Miller. A perfect safety record for the most ambitious engineering project in galactic history. Miller nodded in acknowledgement, but directed attention to engineer Lisa Reynolds, who sat beside him. In the past year, Lisa had become something of a legend throughout Council space. Her red hair was now streaked with premature gray from the stress of overseeing countless displacement operations, but her eyes remained bright with determination. The credit belongs to Engineer Reynolds and her team, Miller said. They worked miracles daily. Lisa stood to address the Council. The displacement network was never about humans proving superiority. It was about offering a different perspective. Your civilizations mastered faster than light travel millennia ago, but you approached space from only one direction, moving through it. We simply asked, what if we move space instead? The scientific delegates nodded in understanding. The simplicity of the concept, once demonstrated, had sparked a renaissance in Council technology development. This brings us to today's primary agenda, Thillera announced. The formation of the Galactic Engineering Corps, a multi-species collaborative dedicated to technological innovation through diverse perspectives. On the main display appeared the insignia for the new corps, a stylized displacement ring encircling stars of different colors, representing various council worlds. Engineer Reynolds has agreed to serve as the first director. Thillera continued. Each member world will contribute their brightest minds to this joint endeavor. Lisa stepped forward. The court won't focus solely on displacement technology. We'll tackle challenges across all fields: medical science, environmental restoration, energy development. The key is combining different approaches and philosophies. Speaking of different approaches, Admiral Vox interjected, we must address Earth itself. All attention turned to the view screens showing Earth, now returned to its proper place in the solar system. The planet looked subtly different from space. New orbital platforms surrounded it, and the night side glowed with more uniform light patterns, evidence of the technology sharing that had transformed human society. Earth remains the only world to have voluntarily displaced itself as a defensive strategy, Admiral Vox noted. The automated defenses they left behind confused the Drax fleet for 3 critical days, allowing our forces to outmaneuver them. Dr. Ben Taylor, now head of Earth's Scientific Council, smiled at the memory. The look on their faces when they realized they were attacking empty space must have been priceless. Indeed, Vox agreed. Which brings me to the formal acknowledgement. The Council officially recognizes Earth as a protected innovation center. No species may interfere with human development or attempt to direct its course. Humanity has earned the right to forge its own path. This announcement caused murmurs throughout the chamber. Such designation was rare, previously granted to only 3 ancient worlds in Council history. Ambassador Miller stepped to the center of the chamber. On behalf of Earth, we are honored. But we don't seek isolation. The displacement network succeeded because of cooperation. Council technology combined with human creativity. That synthesis is the true lesson here. He gestured to the star pattern of the new council arrangement. The old structure placed the founding worlds at the center, with newer members at the periphery. This new configuration recognizes that innovation often comes from unexpected sources, from the edges rather than the center. Grand Counselor Thellera nodded, a lesson the council needed to learn. For too long, we believed advancement came only from refinement of existing knowledge. Humans showed us that true leaps forward often require stepping back and viewing problems from entirely new angles. The chamber darkened as a holographic presentation began, showing the 12 worlds saved by the displacement network. Each appeared briefly, along with images of their citizens going about their lives that would have been extinguished without the human innovation. These 12 civilizations owe their continued existence to humanity's lateral thinking, Thellera said solemnly. The Council formally acknowledges this debt and declares a new founding principle. Progress comes not just from advancement, but from diversity of thought. As the session concluded, Admiral Vox approached Miller and Lisa in a quiet corner of the chamber. I must make a personal confession, he said, his usually formal demeanor softened. When I first met humans, I classified your species as minimal concern in my reports. I believe your resource limitations and technological gaps would keep you dependent on Council guidance for centuries. Lisa smiled. And now? Now I understand what I missed, Vox replied. Your very limitations forced creativity. Without abundant resources, you had to think efficiently. Without established technological doctrines, you were free to imagine alternatives. Miller nodded. Necessity and fresh perspective. A powerful combination. Indeed, Vox extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned. On behalf of all those who underestimated humanity, I apologize. Miller shook the offered hand. No apology needed, Admiral. Sometimes the best way to prove capability is simply to build something unexpected. As they gazed out at the stars through the chamber's massive viewport, Lisa gestured to the distant pinpoints of light. The displacement network was just the beginning, she said. Humanity's just getting started. Miller smiled. And the galaxy will never be the same. Beyond the viewport, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if in agreement with this new chapter in galactic history. A chapter where the question was no longer whether humans belonged among the stars, but what extraordinary thing they might build next.